great organization, sir. We have, it's like, so I'll try to express myself a little more. It's like, a lot of tapasya people do to get something. So I think it's our tapasya that we have got. Both of them speak to us. And what a opportunity, all of the companies have been looking at innovation in a fresh way. Glen stands as a rock, as an example of innovation. I must say this, Glen. Long back we heard Dr. Anji Reddy say that, if you really want to follow a company, look at Glenmark. And last Sunday, Mr. Shanghvi said the same thing from a different podium, DBG's book inauguration, and it was a real matter of pride. So two great people already endorsing what you've done. It's a hard achieved position that you've earned. So now we'll get into the questions. Mr. Shanghvi sir, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to speak to you. You started, with just two products. You mentioned two representatives, one of which was you. And because no one was doing neurology, you were doing it. From there to now, it's been a momentous journey. At that time, did you really think that it will become so big, 45 billion market cap, close to 60,000 crore in revenues? Big things are happening now.
No, I don't think.
Honest.
And that reflects my conviction that all of us have potential for doing far more than what we know. It's important to find a way to get out of your comfort zone, take risks, take bets on future, so that you can achieve far more than what you would achieve without that.
Right. So you also mentioned that while efforts are important to realize your goals, you also need a lot of luck. Where did you find luck and where did it not work for you?
No, I think the biggest element of luck would be that by default we got into relatively less competitive therapy areas, which were also small markets. But as India continued to evolve and chronic diseases, aging-related diseases started becoming a bigger part of the business in the country, it allowed us to grow along with that growth. So, let's say when the industry was growing at around 3, 4, 5%, these therapy areas were growing at 20-25%, and we were present there. So kind of we rode the wave to growth. So it's a kind of default position because we went in these areas because you don't need very large field force to do this business in India. And we couldn't actually afford large number of people. So we went into this business by default, or because that was the only thing we could have done, and we were at the right place, right time.
Absolutely, right. To you, Glenn. Last year was like a big milestone year for you and for the industry. $1.9 billion deal, AbbVie. A lot of patients came in there. But through a lot of challenges. I still remember 2004 Forest Labs, going into that history to now. I mean, there was a kind of a slump time when things looked like, okay, where is it all heading? Was the business model itself faulty? Because we know what happened with the investors also. What gave you the courage? How did you really take on these bets? Must have been a very tough situation for you.
So let me start by saying I'm truly honored that both Dr. Anji Reddy and Dilip Shanghvi, two veterans and stalwarts of the industry, recognize that Glenmark is doing some good work on innovation. Um, I think my journey, I think a lot of my learnings came when I was in the US actually. So I used to work at Eli Lilly in the US and then PricewaterhouseCoopers in consulting, right? And that journey helped me a lot in truly defining that to be a, and this is our conviction, right? Is basically to be a global pharma company, you have to have innovation and science at the backbone of it, right? I couldn't imagine a company in the long run, right, without having an innovative piece to it, right? However big or small, it was critical to innovate, and that's what got us on this journey to start with when I moved back from the US in 2000. And then, of course, you know, we started with small molecules. We had a lot of skepticism, right? When we IPO'd the company, saying, you know, you're doing innovation, putting this capital into innovation. 2004 we did Forest, and then we did a number of licensing deals on that journey, right? I think the first 7 years we did a lot in terms of out licensing, got significant cash flows. And then the next decade was really hard, right? The 2010 to 2020 was extremely tough, where whatever we did failed. We had lots of setbacks, lots of failures, clinical trials failing, investors yelling at us, right? Saying you guys are putting so much of capital and good capital. And we even spun out IGI during that time into a US company, which is our innovative Glenmark Innovation, 100% owned subsidiary, into a US company with a vision that we will raise capital in the US markets. And even that didn't work out. So we continued funding it, continued pruning the portfolio until we ended up with one ISB 2001, which we think is a world-class asset. So it's been a 25-year journey for us on innovation, right? But I think the basic ingrains of why we do what we do is very clear, right? We truly believe that to be a global pharma company, you have to be innovative. And that's the basic conviction, right, under which we built this company. We went through a lot of challenges all along the way, but we stuck to that conviction. And today that's the reward that we're seeing out of it.
Now things are going right. What do you think about the future? Research remains as risky as it has always been for you. What are the lessons?
I mean, things going right, you know, is after seeing so much of failure, right, at every stage, you know, we've had maybe a dozen assets fail, at least a dozen in clinical trials in different phases. So you never know, right? Innovation is a journey, you never know. You can have failures at any point in time. But I think broadly, you know, it's been a huge learning, right? So at every stage you learn, you reinvent yourself, you transform yourself, you figure out what the next steps are, and you keep going on the path, right? So yeah, when you're saying things are going right, I mean, you never know. For now, the pipeline is doing well, the programs are doing well, but this is a journey after seeing it for so many years, right? That one never knows. But you just have to stay on the path and keep going, right? And keep moving forward.
Right. Sir, you have followed a more cautious approach. Also, you mentioned that, you know, it really allows you to learn how a global drug development process actually unfolds. From the time we saw Tildra, even at that time we were a little skeptical, you know, being sixth, fourth, fifth, sixth, probably again, you know, getting head on with the race of big pharma, Lilly, Novartis, they were all there. Were you like very calculated in terms of how you are going to develop the drug? I mean, it was in phase 2 at that time? Phase 3. So, I mean, it was a more cautious approach, less risky. Your thoughts on that?
No, I think what you say is correct, is that when a product is in phase 3 and a company like Merck is developing, and if they are convinced on the product, I think you've significantly reduced the potential biology risk. There will always be the business risk. And I think our lack of understanding of the US reimbursement environment and system ultimately led to a situation where we felt that if I have a competitive, therapeutically superior asset, we should be able to get a bigger market share. But the environment in the US is very different. So because of which I think we have a relatively very small market share. The second issue is that, and in hindsight, we should have started developing the product for multiple other indications together. And that's not something which we could financially afford. But then if we were creative, then we could have partnered or done something so that at least the inherent value of the product could be leveraged. So I think the business, the attractive part of the business is that you constantly learn, and it still gives you an opportunity to come back with greater understanding so that you can succeed next time.
To both of you, now we are seeing the kind of lift that innovative products can do. So you mentioned that you spend hundreds of millions of dollars on one product, you get a major jump in your revenues versus $2 to $3 million that you do for each ANDA. It also grows, but not it doesn't change the game. Going forward, sir, do you think that composition will change dramatically? You're already 20% of your revenues coming from innovative products. That question will also be to Glenn. So why don't you start?
I think, the Glenmark journey is we are constantly trying to move up the value chain. So, if I look out over the next 5 to 10 years, right, with the number of innovative assets coming into commercialization, right, some of it we licensed, the 3 oncology products. And then, of course, ISB 2001, we still hold all the emerging market rights for it. So that will be a commercial launch for us in all India and all emerging markets. And then on the back of that, we have several other assets that we are working on. So I think the next 5 to 10 years will be a very rich period in terms of innovation for Glenmark, in terms of commercialization. So far, all our efforts, the last 25 years of mine have been in the discovery end and the clinical end, right? Now we are actually moving up to more late phase development and commercialization. So that's the next wave of how the next 5 to 10 years will work for us for the company.
No, I think I share the excitement which Glenn has about future, because we are trying to correct some of the things we didn't do with Ilumya by developing for other indications, by doing things differently for Unloxit as well as Lexilvi. These are also products with significant potential upside. And the important issue for us is to focus on developing it for other indications, but also try and sell them effectively for approved indication. And they are differentiated assets with clean clinical profile, with favorable side effect profile. So how do we leverage that benefit and get a bigger share of the market that we are presenting? So our focus is to find a way to grow our innovative product pipeline from, let's say, 20% of business to becoming a bigger part of the company as we move forward. And when I look at both what we are doing within the company, development of GLP also based on phase 2A study, that initial indication of non-blinded data we have, I think it's a differentiated GLP. So very excited about how the composition of business will continue to evolve, with a greater part of future growth also coming from innovative products.
So that landscape has been changing quite a lot. Once we hear about twice a month injection. The next time we hear it's probably a month, once 4 weeks. And so obesity market is like blowing in a big way. I was hearing a discussion a couple of weeks ago. Somebody spoke about Eli Lilly being $1 trillion company, and when we see the next one, so the reply came from one of the big investors is before the next $1 trillion comes from another company, probably Lilly will be in the next $1 trillion. So it will become a $2 trillion company. So it's like really changing the game in a big way. Sir, we have all the environment is actually gearing up for a big change in innovation. We saw the FM budget also mentioning a lot about biosimilars, a lot about 1,000 clinical trial sites which will be accredited. We had Honorable DOP Secretary also speak about a bunch of things. Do you think this is going to be a new start? And we also saw a lot of industry discussions happening. So where do we go from here?
No, I think clearly we see regulatory changes which should overcome many of the historical hurdles by which, let's say, relatively low number of clinical trials were being done in India. Because we have a large patient pool and skilled manpower to conduct clinical studies, and I think it will also create a scientific capability within the country so that we can leverage that. Also, I think the PRIP scheme, the desire to improve the innovation component of business for Indian pharma, I think I'm quite excited about the future, which is going to be different from our past.
I think to add to what Dilip said, the one element which is critical is to also look at talent, right, very closely and see how we can bring back people of Indian origin, to come and set up companies here, more startups. That's a critical element which will further catapult the innovative aspects in the country. And it's great that the government is playing a much more dominant role today, right, with the budget, the PRIP scheme, RDI, many other schemes, ANRF, lots of good activities happening, right, which will, we're very optimistic, right, that the next decade will be very exciting for India on the innovation stage. We have a lot of catch up though with the rest of the world, right, because obviously US and China are so far ahead, right, in terms of the innovative capabilities, but I think, with all this effort, right, we can definitely aspire to be in the short term, right, to be among the top 3-4 players, right, over the next 10-15 years.
Right.
No, also I think to add to what Glenn says is that how do we get international companies to invest in R&D in India? Because if you look back, say 40-50 years back, at least 4 or 5 companies had research infrastructure in India. Today we have 0. So how do we find a way to attract these companies to invest in India? Because when you go abroad and go to their research infrastructure, you have large number of people of Indian origin working in these companies. So it's not that talent is not there in India, but how do we create an environment by which this talent delivers the value which they are able to deliver in Europe or USA? How can they deliver that in India? And that is what will lift up the overall capability.
That's where exactly, a lot of challenges come, because Glenn, you faced the kind of big blows from the investors, the pipeline which was so rich. And in fact, I keep hearing that even in the US, the pipelines are actually valued. That didn't happen. So how do you, a couple of things that you would like to see changing in the Indian context?
I think it's, capital markets will do their own thing, right? I'm hoping that in this next decade, capital markets will evolve, right, to looking at innovative assets very differently than they did in the last decade or 2 decades, right? So that transformation will happen. It's a matter of time, right? I think we need a few more successes, like our deal with AbbVie, landmark deal, $700 million upfront, and that built a lot of confidence. And I think if we have a few more successes coming out of India, you will see, capital markets starting to value this, right? And especially if we get a few more large deals, right? That will change that journey, right? But my underlining message is, I have never bothered about market cap, right, on this journey, right? I've seen it all, right? I've seen the highs, the lows, all kinds of stuff, right? So if you have to play the long game. Innovation is a long game. You have to be there for the long term, and you have to stay focused on trying to come up with something transformational, right? Because if you're playing to the markets, quarter by quarter, you are not going to succeed, right, in the innovation space. So I think the key is, how do you look at it on a much more longer term horizon, and how do you make sure that you're able to sustain your innovation efforts over time, which will pay huge dividend. So that's my thoughts on this question.
No, I think what Glenn says is right, is that running a business based on what investors think that you should be doing is a fool's errand. Because I think you have to run the business for what is most appropriate for the business to achieve its full potential. But at the same time, I think to evaluate because valuation of your business is a function of what investors think you are going to deliver. So you don't need to run your business quarter to quarter if you have long-term investors in your company. So it depends on what kind of investors you attract. But at the same point of time, unless and until we get sector investors to invest in Indian pharma companies, it will be very difficult for creating an environment where people will start giving value for pipeline. Because if you see any of the analyst report for any pharma company in India, you have only valuation based on cash flow. So how do we change that and we start getting value for pipeline and all, is what I think is the change that which is required. And for that we need to have a critical mass of companies with large number of innovative assets. So like if you have 50, 100 drugs in India in different stages of development, the analysts and investors in India also will learn how to value these assets.
One of the things that we have been actually hearing a lot in the last couple of years is use of AI. US companies are doing that a lot. People are actually talking about de novo drug design, of how do we actually get to a new drug all from the past data. And it's a subject really evolving very fast. Your thoughts, do you want to apply those latest tools? What would be the best ways to take your research pipeline to the next level?
No, I don't think I'm qualified to respond because I don't understand the subject at that level. But we are seriously evaluating how we can get help in terms of expertise, which can leverage this capability to strengthen because the key issue is how can we accelerate the development. Because when your competitors are using AI to bring a product to market faster, then if you're late, it will not help. So how do you come up with a new idea or a new structure which others cannot think of? I think are great opportunities to ultimately solve for problems which current drugs cannot solve, so that patients can benefit.
I think AI will play an important role going forward. I would say in the short term in the small molecule space, right, small molecule discovery, and I think biologics, it will take a little longer, but it will play an important role in the whole research cycle, right? Whether it's clinical trials, whether it is in molecular modeling, drug design, various aspects, right, of the whole research process. It will it'll take some time. I think having some kind of AI skill set longer term is critical to be competitive. Short term, it'll still take much more time for the more the biologic side, but I think small molecules, it can play an important role.
Also, I think
Yeah.
shorter term, I see an opportunity to, let's say, filing timelines, analyzing your phase 3 data and submitting the CSR and all of that much faster. Typically, it takes a few months. How can you condense that to a few weeks?
Right.
And the technology exists,
Right.
capability exists. So how do you leverage all of that so that from your first patient in phase 3, recruiting patients faster, completing the studies faster, and filing the products faster once the studies are done can potentially give you 1.5 year of time advantage, and it can be significant value. So I see that there is no option but for us to use AI in drug discovery and research.
Right. So, a question on the global, research landscape. We just saw like a European company seeing a change at leadership. Somebody commented that boardrooms are brutal, killing fields. We saw a similar situation on the obesity front. People have been expecting a lot more from European and American companies. The pipelines are really actually fading there also, and so we see so many Chinese companies emerging and doing such deals. Can you give us a picture about the global landscape? Where do we stand? Is this a very strong opportunity for Indian companies to really play a dramatic game that can actually lift our position also? Glenn.
If you look at the world right today, I mean, there's so much happening on innovation, right? And there are so many companies between US, China, Europe, I mean, who are racing to the finish line, right, to bring their products to commercialization, right? In each of the therapeutic areas, if you see, there is a ton of effort ongoing, right, on innovation. And it's a fast changing landscape where speed is critical, right? I think the idea is, you wonder how much of exclusivity you can actually have, right, in today's environment, because you've got so many other drugs, people who are pushing to bring their drugs to market, right? And the whole innovation space is evolving very, very fast, right? In that context, of course, India, we have a lot of catch up to do. We are, with the government funding, with all the new initiatives, right, we can have a clear vision that 2047, the Viksit Bharat time frame, right, is an appropriate time frame for us to make a dent on the global stage, right? But we have to start now, and we have to put in a lot of effort and funding, right, into catching up with where the rest of the world is at in terms of the global innovation platform.
No, I think one thing which you talked of China, one myth which I think they've broken is that innovation is only possible in the US or in Europe. So I think it's feasible for us to leverage and understand from China as to what are the key drivers which shifted the capability. Everything which is possible in China, because it's a different type of economy, cannot be feasible for India. But how can we still achieve the outcome that they achieved by doing something which is feasible for India? There is a great opportunity to learn, and I believe that when I interact with the government officials or also with the political system, there is a recognition and realization that they realize the opportunity and they wish to commit to see that we get that part of that opportunity. At the same point of time, I think as the economy is progressing and prospering, market access and ability to pay for drugs, changing insurance environment should also change the structure of Indian pharma market. So I see opportunity both in innovation as well as in ability to grow in other parts of our business.
So I think, sir, you have been a role model for many here. We've been seeing the way Sun Pharma actually completely distinguished itself, in terms of how it works, how it actually looks at global expansion. Who have been your role models, sir?
No, I think if you look at people who established the industry in India, say Parvinder Singh or Dr. Hamid or Anji Reddy, I mean, they have clearly helped India chart out a path so that we can be successful. And there is something to learn from all of them. So like if you look at UN Mehta, I think personally for Sun Pharma, that has been a great role model. So I think huge contribution that say Zaira's Mr. Modi and Raman Bhai Patel. So lot to learn from all of them.
Now probably they are learning from you how they can actually replicate what Sun Pharma is doing. The tables have completely turned. Glenn, I know, I missed that press conference, but I heard from my friends in the industry, in our media fraternity, that Glenn was absolutely emotional on that day. It actually showed that your commitment, your passion is so much in research. Especially, to have a deal which is so big and so important for the country. You actually said that it's for the country. What kept you going?
I think I'm super passionate, right, about innovation. So that it's the passion, it's the commitment, it's the fact that I truly believe that innovation is critical, right, to be able to transform a company. And while we've done phenomenally as a country on generics, on being the pharmacy of the world, it's great accolades, right, for the country. And today, I think the next level of our next journey has to be innovation, right, as a country. And we've done so much in these areas. So it's exciting. For me, the passion is what keeps me going, and trying to put India on the world map, right, is what will give me the greatest satisfaction, right, to know that an Indian company has actually been able to do something transformational. So long way to go, Vikas. It's still early days for us, but that's the excitement that we see, right, over the next 5 to 10 years.
I wouldn't ask when is the next ISB 2001 coming. Yeah, cool. All right, I think this is great. Thank you so much, sir, and thank you, sir, for giving us the opportunity to really dip into your minds and see how things have worked. We still have so many opportunities, as you mentioned, and for the last 25-30 years that I have been actually covering the sector, it still appears like the next day is going to be much more exciting, and they have kept the momentum going for us. So hopefully there will be a lot more to write for us and a lot more opportunities for companies like Sun and Glenn to keep growing. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Thank you.